One day, there was a genius programmer and otaku named Korda, who loved his work, especially game development. He worked for a well-known company, and one day, he was under a lot of work pressure. His friends were worried, not knowing how they would finish their tasks, but Korda reassured them with his passion for his work, telling them that they would manage to finish everything on time. And indeed, Korda was able to complete all his tasks. After that, he went to a game store and found that the second part of his favorite game about robots had been released. He couldn't believe it and was the first to buy the new copies. Then he rushed home, hoping to get some sleep before work the next day. However, on his way, something unexpected happened. A car hit Korda, and he died, and all the games he bought went to his house, but he didn't even get the chance to open them. But a miracle occurred, and Korda's soul was transferred into the body of a small child in another world, in a completely different life. We see him sleeping on his mother's lap in a car, accompanied by his grandfather. They were talking about a robot warrior named Saito Nato, whom his father was supposed to control. Later, they changed the subject, and his grandfather expressed concern about Arnie's growth in the new world. His mother replied that although Arnie was smaller than other kids, she expected him to do something great in the future. While they were talking, a giant monster attacked them, hitting their car. His grandfather got out and tried to kill the monster with his sword, and his mother helped him with magic. Arnie was left alone in the car, but at that moment, another, much bigger monster appeared and destroyed the car Arnie was in. Just then, his father, who was controlling the robot warrior, arrived in time and saved Arnie before the monster could devour him. A battle broke out between the robot and the monster, where the monster breathed fire on the robot, but the robot proved to be incredibly strong, resisting the heat and pushing the monster back. Eventually, the robot pierced the monster's heart with its sword, killing it. Arnie's father, the robot's pilot, got out to check on the family, while Arnie briefly remembered some moments from his previous life, like when he bought the games, but he couldn't fully understand what was happening. All he did was point at the warrior and call it a robot. His father came down and explained that it was called Saito Nato, powered by magic. His grandfather noticed how excited Arnie was about the robot, and told him that he needed to grow up, learn magic, and wield a sword to join the Nato Runner program and ride the Saito Nato. Arnie was thrilled and took the matter seriously, spending the next 3 years studying and learning everything about magic and the Saito Nato, so that when he grew up, he could do as his grandfather said and join the Nato Runner. After 3 years, one day, a boy and a girl named Kido and Eddie, siblings, ran away from home because they were afraid of their mother's punishment. They climbed to the roof of their house and jumped from one roof to another until Eddie stumbled and fell off the roof. Luckily, she fell next to Arnie's house, and Arnie saw her in time to save her with his magic before she could fall. Kido rushed to check on his sister and asked Arnie how he was able to use magic like that. From that moment, Arnie met his future friends, who would stay by his side throughout his life. Kido, amazed, asked Arnie to teach him magic the same way Arnie did. Arnie explained that learning magic took a lot of practice to activate the magical energy inside him, but he had no problem teaching him. Just then, Arnie's tutor, who had been searching for him along with his mother, found him on the roof. Eddie told Arnie they would meet at the same place the next morning, and they said their goodbyes. Since Arnie's family was responsible for training the Nato runners to be able to control the Saito Nato, he decided to join the Royal Academy to follow in his family's footsteps and ride the Saito Nato when he grew older. After entering the academy with his friends, Arnie attended his first lesson, excited to learn. He opened a book that was specifically about the Saito Nato, but his teacher said they would first study the basics of magic, since they were still young. Arnie, still excited, told the teacher that he wanted to become a Nato runner quickly and study the specifications of the Saito Nato, but the teacher discouraged him, refusing to teach what he wanted. Arnie left with his friends, feeling down, but they comforted him, telling him not to be upset with his teacher. Arnie then had an idea and told them that he wanted to create his own version of the Saito Nato to learn how to control it, but he first needed to understand its design principles. At that moment, another boy named Pachin came running after a group of bullies who had taken his hammer. Arnie stopped him and asked what was going on. Pachin explained that he wanted his hammer back, but his classmates had taken it because he was slow and had short legs, and they were bullying him. Arnie asked him why he had come to the academy, since he didn't look like a typical student. The boy mocked him and said that he surely hadn't come to the academy to become a Nato runner, because short people like him would never fit the Saito Nato. Arnie, along with Eddie and Kido, decided to help Pachin. They used magic to throw Pachin at the bullies, and he grabbed his hammer back. Pachin thanked them and asked how they had learned magic. They told him Arnie had taught them, and together, they went to the blacksmith. Arnie explained that in order to use magic, they needed a catalyst that could transform their energy into magic. This catalyst could be a staff or a magic rod, and they could also alter its appearance to give them more power. He then crafted a staff called the Gonic Staff, which combined both a magic rod and a weapon. The blacksmith liked Arnie's idea and decided to make the magical weapon he had designed. Arnie was thrilled and told his friends that he would use it in front of the whole school the next day. The following day, there was a showcase where academy students would display their magical talents. Arnie went to ask Sensei if he could participate, and if he performed well, he would be excused from the basic magic classes and allowed to attend the advanced ones instead. Sensei replied that just because Arnie was the grandson of the headmaster, it didn't mean he would receive special treatment. However, Arnie insisted, and Sensei agreed. Sensei told him that to perform well and skip the basic magic classes, he needed to have mastered all the basics and reach the level of a student capable of activating mana. Arnie agreed, and Sensei allowed him to participate. Arnie stood up, took out his weapon, aimed it at the target, and destroyed it. Everyone was amazed, and it was clear that he had mastered all the necessary basics. He got his wish and began attending the more advanced classes with older students. 3 years passed, and Arnie was now 12 years old. He went with Pachin to watch the robot manufacturing process. Pachin asked if Arnie was still planning to create his own Cytonado. Arnie replied affirmatively, and Pachin said that this was extremely difficult, almost impossible, since ever since the creation of the Cytonado, no one had been able to improve or innovate on it. Just then, Eddie and her brother Kido called out to Arnie for their trip. It turned out that the academy had organized a trip for the top students to visit a forest full of small monsters. They would be accompanied by a few Cytonados to protect them. During the trip, a girl named Enai, who was the president of the student council and Eddie and Kido's half-sister, arrived and greeted Arnie, saying that she saw him as a talented and special boy. Eddie and Kido, however, seemed uncomfortable with their older sister's presence. After Enai left, Kido told Arnie that their mother came from a poor family, while Ni's mother came from a rich one, which was why Enai was treated better. Arnie thought of a way to mess with Enai and asked Kido and Eddie what they thought about playing a prank on her that night. Eddie and Kido laughed and thanked Arnie for being with them, regardless of their family's financial background. Later, Arnie went for a walk around the area and saw a Cytonado standing. He was amazed and watched as a man named Edgar, the pilot of the Cytonado, got out. Noticing Arnie's excitement, Edgar offered to show him inside the Cytonado. Arnie agreed without hesitation and ran to climb into it. However, when he tried to operate it, he realized that he was too short and couldn't reach the brakes, just as he had expected. Suddenly, a large number of monsters attacked, and Arnie ran back to the camp. He woke up his friends, and the academy started gathering the younger students in vehicles to take them to safety. The older students stayed behind to fight the monsters using magic and the Cytonados. However, Eddie and Kido noticed that their older sister was fighting off a large number of monsters surrounding her. Worried, they joined Arnie to help her. At that moment, a massive monster called the behemoth appeared, ringing the alarm bell. They watched from a distance and were shocked when they realized that the monster was incredibly strong. The leader ordered all the Cytonados to stand on the wall and wait for the monster to approach. As soon as it got close, they would strike it with their magical attacks. However, the monster wasn't affected at all and continued its advance towards the wall. All the Cytonados descended, and the leader instructed them to focus on the monster's legs and arms to stop its movement. But the monster was so huge that it crushed all the Cytonados in its path, destroying them. The leader jumped onto the monster's face to strike its eye, but at that moment, the monster breathed a wave of incredibly hot fire, killing the leader and causing the heat to breach the wall. Meanwhile, a boy the leader had sent to deliver a message to another commander in the kingdom arrived, but he was too late, and most of the soldiers had already died. As for Arnie, Kido, Eddie, and a few Cytonados, they managed to defeat all the smaller monsters that had attacked their camp, as they were far from the massive behemoth. Enai went to thank Arnie, Kido, and Eddie for saving her and protecting the other students. She then joined the paramedics to help the injured students. Kido and Eddie told her to rest for a bit, as she had worked hard during the monster attack. Enai assured them that she was fine. Before she left, Arnie told her that he wanted to talk about something. He explained that the forest was supposed to be safe, and it was impossible for the monsters to attack like that. He suspected that a much greater force had taken control of the monsters and made them attack the forest in such a way. At the same time, the boy the leader had sent arrived in the kingdom and informed the senior commander about what had happened in the forest. He was certain that the monster would pass through the forest and head towards the city. The commander and his team were tense because the monster was so powerful that even if they gathered all the Cytonados, they wouldn't be enough to defeat it. One of the men mentioned another problem. There was a group of students currently training in the forest alone. The commander ordered a search party to head into the forest with him to check on the students and confirm the presence of the monster. While Arnie was talking with Enai and his friends, suspecting that a greater power had influenced the monsters, he was interrupted when the massive behemoth attacked them, causing chaos in the entire camp. Arie quickly directed his friends to the vehicles on the northern side of the camp so they could leave the forest immediately. Edgar gathered his team, and they all climbed into their Saito-nados. They positioned themselves at a distance from the monster, and Edgar ordered them to attack the monster to distract it, allowing the younger students to escape. Each Saito-nado fired from different positions, and the monster was distracted. They got excited, thinking that the monster would retreat, but the behemoth stopped and breathed fire at one of the Saito-nados. When his teammate, named Derichi, saw what had happened to his comrade, he panicked and fled with his Saito-nado, running away in fear. Edgar tried to stop him, but he couldn't. Derichi continued running, terrified. Then, they saw Arie. Instead of getting into the vehicle to leave, Arie flew toward him. He found that Derichi's Saito-nado had fallen, and Derichi was devastated, feeling guilty for abandoning his friends to die alone because he was scared and didn't help them. Arie opened the Saito-nado, and when he realized that Derichi had fled, he grabbed him and placed him behind, taking control of the Saito-nado himself. However, it was clear that Arie was too short to reach any of the control parts of the Saito-nado. But he had prepared for this. He removed some control parts and connected wires to his weapon, and that's when Arie was able to control the Saito-nado's programming. He made a brilliant move, one that only a genius programmer could make, by connecting himself to the Saito-nado. Instead of controlling it through the components, he could now issue commands, and the Saito-nado would execute them. As soon as Arie succeeded, he felt a happiness he had never felt before because, for the first time in his life, he had achieved his dream. He had managed to control the Saito-nado exactly as he wanted. When he tried it out and gave it commands, the Saito-nado followed them. Arie ran with it, excited, jumping over rocks and water until he reached his friends and saved them from the monster. During this time, Kido and the others were extremely worried about him, wondering where he had gone. Kido suspected that Arie had gotten into one of the Saito-nados and was heading towards the monster. Ni laughed and told them that even if Arie wanted to do that, he wouldn't be able to, as he was too short. Meanwhile, Edgar and his team were in a dire situation with the monster. His teammate, Helvi, fell from her Saito-nado and couldn't move, and the monster was closing in to kill her. At that moment, Arie appeared, and everyone thought it was Derichi who had returned. Arie attacked the monster, laughing, and with his first strike, he managed to hit the monster in the eye, completely distracting its vision. Edgar went to help Helvi and ordered Derichi's Saito-nado to delay the monster while they helped her. Arie, thrilled, leapt with the Saito-nado, managing to dodge every attack from the monster. He kept running from it, trying to stall it. Arie noticed that the monster's body couldn't be pierced with any sharp weapon, so they wouldn't be able to kill it that way. He also observed that its body was filled with crystals. He realized that these crystals were supplying the monster with energy, acting as its power source. Therefore, if they wanted to defeat it, they would need to destroy the energy points. While he was standing a bit away from the monster, trying to analyze its movements and figure out how to proceed, Derichi woke up at the worst possible moment. As soon as he saw the monster, he became terrified and startled Arie, causing a mistake that almost got them both killed. Arie quickly told Derichi to calm down since they were in the middle of a battle and needed to focus. Arie then threw all the sharp weapons he had since they wouldn't be useful in this situation. Derichi yelled at him, asking how they were supposed to defeat the monster now, but Arie explained that his Saito-nado's mana was almost depleted, and they needed to conserve it. Derichi pointed to a sword lying on the ground and told him that it wouldn't take any mana and that he should grab it. Arie listened and went to pick up the sword. Meanwhile, the senior commander arrived with his team and confirmed the monster's presence. They saw that Arnie's Saito-nado was performing moves that it shouldn't have been able to do. They were shocked and communicated with him, instructing him to continue those movements until they reached him. Once they arrived, they all struck the monster simultaneously, using machines capable of penetrating its body. The monster was injured, but it only enraged it further, and it breathed fire at the machines, destroying them. Arie was very frustrated and jumped onto the monster's body, stabbing one of the crystals, weakening the monster. The other Saito-nados then attacked the monster again, and Arie pulled his Saito-nado back, noticing that it was nearly exhausted and the mana was running low. Arie then came up with a clever plan and told Derichi to control the robot. He climbed out and stood on top, creating an electrical barrier between the Saito-nado and the monster. As the monster approached the barrier, Arie jumped onto it, connecting his body to the electricity, which electrocuted the monster, draining all its energy and killing it. Derichi's teammates gathered around the robot, thinking that Derichi had died inside, but they were surprised to see both Derichi and Arie emerge from the robot, still alive. They were even more shocked when they learned that Arie had been controlling the Saito-nado all this time. Arnie's friends gathered around, and Arie, thrilled, told them that he planned to create a line of Saito-nados of his own. When the king of the city heard that it was Arie who had been controlling the Saito-nado, he became slightly worried, knowing that a 12-year-old with such power could be a potential threat. He asked his assistant to bring Arie to speak with him. Arie, accompanied by his grandfather, stood before the king. The king congratulated Arie on his success in defeating the behemoth and told him that he would reward him with a great prize. His grandfather told the king that Arie was just a child and didn't need any rewards. The king, however, insisted that regardless of his age, anyone who defeated the behemoth deserved to be rewarded. He then directly asked Arie, "What do you want?" Arie was taken aback by the question and sensed that the king wasn't asking as a gesture of reward but rather as a test. He hesitated and was unsure of what to say. Should he ask for nothing or should he request to ride the Saito Nado? After a moment of reflection, he decided this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and couldn't waste it. He decided to ask for something seemingly impossible, something that might never be his, even after 100 years. In the end, he shocked everyone by asking to know how to create the heart of the Saito Nado, the ether reactor. Everyone stared at him in surprise and amazement at his boldness. Dexgard, the king's assistant, spoke up, asking how Arie dared to make such a request, as the process of creating the reactor was one of the greatest secrets of the state and could never be revealed to anyone. The king silenced Dexgard and turned to Arie, asking why he wanted to know the secret of the Saito Nado's heart. Arie explained that he wanted to create his own Saito Nado and ride it. The king told him that if he had simply asked for a Saito Nado of his own, he would have granted it, but Arie clarified that he wanted to build one with his own hands, as that was his passion. The king chuckled at him. Arnie's grandfather, worried the king might harm Arie, tried to quiet him and leave, but the king stopped them, telling Arie that he could consider his request granted. Everyone was shocked, and Arie himself was taken aback, but he felt joy. However, the king added a condition: defeating the behemoth alone wasn't enough to earn such a great secret. If Arie could create a Saito Nado framework that impressed him, then he would give him the method for crafting the ether reactor. Arie happily thanked the king, promising to live up to his expectations. Later, Arie returned home, and Eddie and Kito's father, who also worked with the king, returned to his own home. He gathered his children and told them that he had learned from Ni that they were friends with Arie. He asked them that if Arie ever achieved anything, they should come to him immediately so he could inform the king first. Eddie asked if this would harm Arie in any way, and her father reassured her that it wouldn't hurt Arie. On the contrary, it would help him greatly. They promised to inform him if Arie accomplished anything significant. Meanwhile, Arie went to the workshop where the Saito Nados were repaired. The workshop manager stood in front of the Saito Nado that Arie had used to attack the monster, perplexed, unsure of what had happened to it to make it break down in such a way. Arie appeared, proud and pleased, as he had been the one to cause the damage to the Saito Nado. The workshop owner was shocked when he learned that Arie had done it, and Pachin, Arnie's friend, who also worked in the workshop, quickly pulled Arie aside and told the workshop owner that Arie didn't mean what he had said. The workshop owner stopped them both and led them to his office. He asked Arie to explain what had happened. Arie recounted everything, explaining how he had managed to control the Saito Nado by accessing its system, manipulating its programming, and giving it commands that it then executed. The reason the Saito Nado had been damaged was that Arie had drained the remaining mana from it and used it to defeat the monster. The workshop owner looked at Derichi, who was still frightened from the previous events, and asked if what Arie was saying was true. Derichi nodded in confirmation. Arie then told the owner that if Derichi hadn't gotten into the Saito Nado and controlled it while he was attacking the monster alone, they would never have been able to defeat it. The workshop owner then returned to the matter at hand and told Arie that, according to what he was saying, if they could use the full energy of the Saito Nado, they could destroy anything, even another Saito Nado. Arie agreed, and the owner asked how they could accomplish that. Arie explained that if they could use crystal fibers to connect the parts of the Saito Nado together, it would give them much greater power and mobility. However, they would first need to make a small adjustment to the Saito Nado's design. Arie gathered everyone in a room and told them that he wanted to make the Saito Nado easier to use by adding extra arms to its back. Pachin told Arie that the design of the Saito Nado was originally human-shaped to allow proper control, and adding extra arms would make it difficult for them to control them. Arie explained that the additional arms would move on their own, and they wouldn't have to manually control them. To demonstrate, they returned to the workshop, where they created a rough prototype of what Arie envisioned. He had Helvi try the Saito Nado and told her that the front arms would hold the sword, while the back arms would use mana to attack the monsters, eliminating the need to constantly switch between the sword and staff. This would save time and give them much more power. When Helvi tried it, she found it much easier and better than before. The workshop owner, incredibly proud and happy with Arie, thanked him for his brilliance, which would lead them to new possibilities. As the evening passed, Arie and his friends returned home. On their way, his friends told him they never wanted to leave him alone again and wanted to be with him in every battle against the monsters. Arie, happy with their words, promised them that he had a plan for them to stay together forever. He then went with the workshop owner to present the king with a design for the new Saito-Nato framework and told him about the modifications, as well as one more thing he wanted to do: shrink the Saito-Nato size so it would be faster to produce and also give it greater power and control. The king agreed to the proposal. Arie returned to the workshop and gathered all his friends at school, telling them that he had received permission from the king to allow them to make the Saito-Nato themselves, with Pachin overseeing them. They began working on the design, and in no time, they produced a large batch of small Saito-Natos. Everyone, including Arnie's friends, tried them out and found they could control them easily and loved it. However, Edgar, who was used to the larger Saito-Nato, struggled with the smaller version and had difficulty walking and controlling it. He told Arie that while the Saito-Nato was good, he had trouble with the controls, and it consumed too much mana. Arie assured him he would make adjustments to the Saito-Nato later, as it was still in the testing phase. They all then tried the larger Saito-Nato with additional arms, and it worked well, providing excellent targeting accuracy, although it was a bit slow due to its massive power. The workshop owner told Arie that these were just minor adjustments that could be fixed later. The important thing was that the Saito-Nato was functioning well, and their design had been a success. The time had come for a test battle, so they decided to pit the old Saito-Nato against the new one to see which was stronger. Helvey rode the new Saito-Nato, while Edgar rode his old one. Initially, Helvey was much stronger and attacked from a distance, while Edgar's Saito-Nato took significant damage as he tried to close the distance. However, Edgar, experienced in combat, used a large amount of mana to accelerate himself and rush towards Helvey, breaking one of the additional arms of her Saito-Nato. But Helvey quickly flipped him onto the ground, and with her sword, she was about to destroy his Saito-Nato. Suddenly, the new Saito-Nato stopped moving as its fuel ran out. The workshop owner and everyone else cheered, happy that the Saito-Nato worked. Its only issue now was that it ran out of fuel quickly. They celebrated their success, but Arie told them that it would still take a lot of time before the Saito-Nato was fully ready. Just as he said this, a disguised figure left the workshop and entered a room where 3 people were sitting. The figure reported to the leader that Arie still hadn't finished the Saito-Nato, and it would take more time. At that point, it was unclear who the leader was or what they wanted from Arie. The next day, they all returned to the workshop to find a solution to the problem of fuel running out too quickly in the new Saito-Nato. If it kept draining fuel that fast, they would never be able to use it in future battles. They were unsure of how to solve this at first. To create a new Saito-Nato that consumed less energy meant they would have to change the ether reactor, which seemed impossible. Eddie suggested to Arie that they could change the mana tank's design or modify the Saito-Nato itself. Arie thought it was a good idea and said they could try it later. Then, Arie and his friends tested the small Saito-Nato he had worked on. He told them he had added many new features, including powerful new weapons. They tried them out, including flight and a weapon that could fire multiple shots without running out. Later, the workshop owner called Arie to show him the modifications they had made to the larger Saito-Nato to address the fuel issue. They added a lot of extra crystal fibers to increase control and reduce fuel consumption, but the result was a bulky and unattractive Saito-Nato with poor balance. The first solution failed miserably, so they postponed further adjustments, as Arie had school. During class, as the teacher was explaining, Arie suddenly had an idea for the new Saito-Nato's name and decided to call it Telstal. After school, Arie went back to the workshop and found his grandfather there, admiring the new Telstal. His grandfather was proud of Arie and asked if this was the model he was going to present to the king. Arie replied that the king wanted the best version, and the Telstal still had a lot of potential and modifications to go through. The workshop owner, surprised, couldn't believe there was more to be done on the Telstal. Arie explained that he had created the Telstal as a template and would design many other versions, better and more appealing, to show the king. His grandfather joked that, at this rate, he might die before seeing the final version of the Saito-Nato. The workshop owner said that to make these advanced Saito-Nato models, Arie would need to present them to the laboratory or organization responsible for Saito-Natos, as all of this had to be done under their supervision. Arie agreed, though he was slightly nervous about how the lab would react to a 12-year-old outdoing them. Eddie and Kido were standing behind them. Eddie told Kido they should inform their father about what Arie was doing because they couldn't be sure how the lab would respond to Arnie's progress. If their father knew what was going on, he could help, and the lab might gather more information, which would help him gain the king's trust. The next day, they were all in the workshop as usual. Then, Commander Martin arrived from the kingdom with an order from Dexgard, the king's assistant. He wanted to gather all the new Saito-Natos and take them to his camp for testing. They agreed and began preparing the Telstals for transport. Kido stood aside, telling Eddie that something about this situation felt off, and he had a bad feeling about it. Once they arrived at the location, they were attacked by a giant worm. All the Saito-nados gathered to fight the worm, and Arie helped them. They succeeded in stopping the creature. Meanwhile, Eddie and Kido sat, feeling uneasy. Eddie asked Kido why it was Commander Martin, not their father, who had come and why they took all the telstals they had created. Kido didn't know either, and he wasn't feeling comfortable about it. Just then, the workshop owner came, and they hurried to find Arie but discovered he was not there. They asked the workshop owner about Arie, and he told them that Arie was with Dexgard and the telstals. Dexgard then asked Commander Martin about his opinion on the telstal. Commander Martin replied that it was very impressive, much better than their own Saito-nados, and that the king would be very pleased with this. Commander Dexgard told him that, for them, this was a major problem, not a good thing, because creating and developing the Saito-nado takes them about 300 years. The fact that Arie had developed it in just a few days was highly concerning. He asked to have Arie brought to him so they could speak. Once Arie entered, Dexgard asked him to explain everything about the new Saito-nado. Arie sketched out the design of the Saito-nado and explained each part, detailing what it did and also sharing the challenges he faced, including its size, fuel issues, and his ideas for solving them. Dexgard informed him that the king had made him responsible for his project. Anything that happened would be under his supervision, and he would decide if he approved it or not, sending all reports directly to the king. He then asked Arie for his opinion on the matter. Arie responded that it was a great idea because, this way, he wouldn't have to explain things to the king again. Dexgard would be the one relaying the information. Dexgard then asked if Arie needed any further explanations about the Saito-nado. Dexgard got irritated and asked if Arie was bothered by what was happening. Arie, not understanding his tone, said that he wasn't bothered at all. Dexgard, being more direct, asked, "What exactly do you want to do?" Arie answered innocently, saying he wanted to finish the Saito-nado quickly before his exams so he could study and graduate from middle school and move on to high school. The commander grew even more frustrated because he felt that Arie might have malicious intentions, hiding behind the innocence he showed. He reminded Arie that designing or developing any Saito-nado took them over 300 years. How could he just walk in and request the process for the ether reactor, which was one of the kingdom's greatest secrets, and act as if he were just a normal child with no ulterior motives? Arie, in his usual innocent way, told him that he hadn't finished his development yet, as he still had many versions to create and would pick the best one. Dexgard was shocked to learn that Arie still had more to do. He sat down, took a deep breath, and asked him one last time why he was doing all of this. Arie simply answered that he was doing it because it was his hobby, nothing more. He then handed Dexgard a book containing all of his plans for the Saito-nado. Gradually, Dexgard began to trust him a bit more, thinking of him just as a child pursuing his passion. Several days passed, and Arie was still with Dexgard. His friends wanted to see him but didn't have an invitation to visit Dexgard like Arie did. The workshop owner told them that they could go see Arie since Derachi's Saito-nado was still being repaired and would be ready soon. Once it was fixed, they would have to take it to Dexgard themselves, and at that point, they could meet with Arie. They all worked together and repaired Derachi's Saito-nado, and when Derachi tried it, it worked perfectly. They prepared the vehicles and the remaining Saito-nados. Eddie and Kido also brought the small Saito-nado they called Cellowit to show Dexgard, although they were actually bringing it just to play with it once they saw Arie. The workshop owner, having already figured them out, didn't mind and gave them the signal to move toward the camp where Arie was. Meanwhile, the evil leader, who had sent a spy to the workshop to gather information on Arnie's progress, was inside a Saito-nado she had stolen. Her group was hiding in the vehicles. They arrived at Dexgard's camp, where all the telstals were kept along with the camp's guards. When the guards saw the Saito-nado approaching, they assumed it was from the workshop and let them in. As soon as they entered, the leader ordered her group to eliminate everyone present and quickly search for the telstals. They found the telstals, and she mounted one while the rest of her group rode the other Saito-nados to escape. As they left the camp, they wiped out everyone there. The soldiers tried to prevent them from escaping by locking down the camp, but Dexgard was informed by his assistant that all the telstals had been stolen from the warehouse. Arie rushed to take action and get orders from the commander to intervene quickly. Dexgard yelled at him, telling him that he was no longer just a student, but now a key part of the Saito-nado development project and they had to protect him. He then ordered Commander Martin to step in and handle the situation outside. Commander Martin mounted his Saito-nado and rushed to the battlefield. The leader and her group were thrilled with the telstals, and she told them to pace themselves to conserve mana so they could escape quickly. At that moment, Commander Martin attacked, managing to bring down some of her group. However, she and one of her allies managed to escape outside the camp. They were shocked to find Edgar, Eddie, and Kido blocking their path and couldn't understand why the telstals were outside at this late hour. They confronted them, and the leader explained that they were just high school students from the academy. When she realized they weren't part of Dexgard's group, she immediately attacked them, assuming they were weak, clueless students. The workshop owner grabbed Pachin, Eddie, and Kido and quickly ran off, leaving Edgar and Derichi to fight the leader. Edgar and Derichi tried to stop her from escaping, and they continued to battle. Eddie and Kido, now wearing the cello-wits, told the workshop owner that they were going to return to help Edgar and Derichi. At that moment, Derichi succeeded in taking down the first Telstol, but the person inside it threw something that blocked his vision. Edgar chased after the leader as she tried to escape. Eddie and Kido caught up with him and offered to help him find the escaped Telstol. Edgar tried to convince them to run for their safety, but they insisted, saying they had worked hard on the Telstols and were angry that they were stolen. They wanted to get them back, so Edgar agreed to let them stay and help, telling them that their mission was to distract the stolen Telstol. Meanwhile, Arie stood in the distance, watching the events unfold, feeling frustrated as he couldn't do anything until, suddenly, he saw the workshop owner and Pachin arriving at the camp. He quickly descended and asked what they were doing there. They told him they had come to deliver the remaining Telstols. Arie noticed they had an extra cello-wit and was thrilled. He quickly put it on and told the workshop owner and Pachin to hide until things settled down at the camp. He then returned to the camp, where the leader's group, now in control of the Telstols, was trying to stop him by disrupting their cytonados. Arie tried to damage their Telstols without destroying them, targeting their vision and breaking their rear arms. Once he had stalled the situation at the camp, Arie went to Commander Martin and told him that he had learned from the workshop owner that there was still a missing Telstol and its owners were nearby. He received permission from the commander and went off to help. At that moment, Edgar had managed to find the leader's Telstol. The leader, noticing he was closing in on her, ordered the man with her to circle around and attack Edgar. As soon as Edgar attacked the leader, the man attacked him. But, at that moment, Eddie and Kido distracted him, and he couldn't stop them as they were too fast and small, like birds. The two of them succeeded in distracting him, and they also tried to disable his Telstol. Kido came up with a clever idea, wrapping ropes around trees. However, as he did so, he bumped into one of them, causing his cello-wit to malfunction and fly in random directions. The man inside the Telstol noticed and tried to catch Kido, but he tripped over the ropes and fell into the water. Kido's plan worked by chance, and Eddie praised him for his cleverness. Meanwhile, Edgar was still battling the leader, who displayed remarkable skills and controlled her Telstol expertly. She managed to knock Edgar down and destroy his cytonado before escaping. Just then, Derichi returned after fixing his Telstol, and when he saw Edgar's Telstol on the ground, he panicked, thinking something had happened to him. He quickly ran to check on Edgar, who reassured him that he was fine. Edgar told him that the Telstol had escaped the other way, and they needed to catch up with it quickly. Derichi got ready to pursue the leader, but he, Eddie, and Kido were confronted by a large group of monsters. Eddie and Kido told him that there were too many monsters and that they couldn't handle them with just one Telstol, so they needed to escape. When Derichi heard the word escape, he remembered the time when he fled and left his friends during the behemoth attack. He decided that he wouldn't repeat the same mistake and would fight with all his courage. He ordered Eddie and Kido to take care of Edgar while he fought the monsters. At that moment, Arie appeared and asked what was happening. They told him that the Telstol had escaped, and the monsters had attacked all at once. Arie told them they needed to fight the monsters first and then look for the Telstol. Just then, Commander Martin joined them, and they all cooperated to defeat the monsters. They succeeded, and all the monsters were killed without anyone getting hurt. The next day, Commander Martin went to Dexgard and reported that they had found the cursed bait in the forest while fighting the monsters the previous day. Dexgard was shocked and told him that the cursed bait was the cause of the monster attacks, which meant someone was deliberately orchestrating these attacks. If they could reach the location of the missing Telstol, they would find out who was behind everything. Later, everyone who had participated in the battle against the monsters and the stolen Telstol gathered before the king. The king honored them and told them that they needed to work more secretly and form a team. He announced that the team would be led by Arie and named it the Silver Phoenix Team. Arie and his friends finally returned to their city, and on the way, Arie fell asleep and dreamed of the games he had bought before his death. He woke up to Kido's voice, telling him they were about to reach the city. During their journey, they discussed how all the Telstols were now at the greatest knight's laboratory in the city, the Cytonado Knights Lab. At the lab, their leader was shouting at the knights because they couldn't figure out how the new Telstol worked. He was confused that a young boy like Arie could create the Telstol in just a few days, while the greatest knights in the kingdom couldn't even analyze it. At that moment, Commander Oliver arrived, hearing the shouting from Commander Jazika. Commander Jazika asked Oliver what he was doing there. Oliver replied that he was there to see the new Saito NATO and liked to tease Jazika about how his methods worked. Jazika replied that he was busy and wouldn't be able to explain how the Telstol worked. He walked off, but Oliver stood in front of the Telstol, amazed by what he saw. He thought to himself that it had been 100 years since he had seen such advancement. Oliver noted that the king would be harsh with them soon, pushing them to create more competition and work harder. Meanwhile, Jazika was fuming about Arie, who worked under the king's orders and was now a significant figure. Jazika thought that if he could use this Telstol, figure out how it worked, and improve upon it, his name would be immortalized in history. That night, Dexgard met with another commander to discuss the recent attacks. They suspected that the countries to the west of the kingdom were behind the spies and attacks in the city. They were especially perplexed because they were responsible for protecting the western lands, handling monster attacks, and ensuring they didn't leave the city's borders. The other commander told Dexgard that he would assign him as the commander of the Sky Hawks, a special team responsible for defending the city from any future attacks, with Arnie's help and the new Telstols. Meanwhile, Arnie was having dinner with his father, mother, and grandfather at home, telling them about everything that had happened. They were stunned when they learned that their young son had become the leader of a special team by the king's order and was now an important figure in the kingdom. The next day, Arnie went to the workshop with Pachin, who was wearing new armor and a new type of Saito NATO. As soon as the workshop owner, Edgar, and the others saw him, they asked Arnie how he managed to power the new armor. Arnie explained that he had gotten the Magius engine from the kingdom. They were all surprised and asked how the government had agreed to give him the Magius engine. Arnie simply replied that he asked for it, and they gave it to him without any compensation. The workshop owner noted that the Magius engine was as important as the ether reactor, and it wasn't something that could just be given away. Arnie assured them that the government had no problem with it. The workshop owner was happy and said that this would make their work much easier. Just then, Eddie and Kido came running to Arnie telling him that their Telstols had returned from the commander, along with a message from the king. They all gathered around as Arnie opened the message, which said that the king wanted a battle between their Telstol and the developed Saito NATO from the lab. Everyone got excited, and Arnie told them that they needed to make some improvements to the Telstol before the battle. Given what happened at Dexgard's camp, they needed to focus on improving the Telstol's speed. Days passed, and Arnie worked on improving the Telstol. They gathered all the students, and everyone worked hard. The workshop owner threatened the students, saying that if they didn't work properly, he would report them to the king. Edgar joked with the owner and reassured the students, telling them the king had given them many privileges and that they could miss school as long as they worked in the workshop. For the students, working in the workshop for 100 hours felt like only 1 hour in school. Afterward, Arnie met a girl named Nora, who was a spy from the Skyhawks. In public, she was just a student at their academy, but she told Arnie about all the developments regarding the stolen Telstols. She had apprehended all the people she suspected but couldn't find anything substantial. Now, they suspected the spies and thefts were coming from other countries. She asked Arnie that if he found out anything, even a small piece of information, he should come to her so she could act immediately. Arnie assured her that she would be the first to know if anything happened. She thanked him and left. Then, Eddie entered the room and told Arnie that she wanted to try out the new Telstol they had just developed. Arnie told her that she came at the perfect time, but before she tried it, he would test it first to make sure it worked properly. He, along with Kido, Eddie, and Pachin, took the new Telstol outside the workshop, and Arnie first tested the speed of the new Saito NATO. As soon as he activated it, they flew so fast that the speed affected the entire city, shattering all the shop windows. It turned out to be incredibly fast, and Arnie couldn't control it, crashing into a tree and destroying it. Eddie, Kido, and Pachin were terrified for Arnie inside the Saito NATO. They quickly freed him and made sure he was okay. Arnie asked them what happened, and they explained that the Saito NATO drained all its mana at once, making it too fast to control. Arnie realized they needed to work more on the Telstol. They couldn't use it in this state and needed to find a solution quickly. Pachin pointed out that their biggest problem was that they had destroyed the Telstol, and the workshop owner would be furious with them. Arnie told them not to worry, but they needed to check the second version of the Telstol. When they returned to the workshop, they found the new version was finished, and it turned out to be a Saito NATO shaped like a beast, meant for 2 riders instead of 1, and supposed to be incredibly fast. There was also a second version of the Saito NATO, shaped like a knight, in a horse stance. Everyone was shocked by the development they had achieved. Arnie told Edgar that he had added a new feature to the beast-shaped Saito NATO. It could only be powered with a key, so if the key was missing, the telestal couldn't be activated, preventing it from being stolen again, like last time. The workshop owner said they only had 3 days before the battle and needed to finalize everything before time ran out. When the 3 days passed and the time for the battle arrived, the king and many people from the kingdom attended. The king asked Commander Oliver and Commander Jazika to present their developed Saito-Nado first. Commander Jazika spoke enthusiastically, saying their version was an upgraded telestal with 2 rear arms, more energy efficient, using 30% less power. Everyone was amazed, as this was a significant improvement. But when the king asked Arie to bring his telestal, they were shocked to see a massive Saito-Nado pulling another beast-shaped telestal, running at incredible speed. From the beast-shaped Saito-Nado, all the new and developed versions of the Saito-Nado were released. Everyone stood in awe and shock at what Arie had done with the Saito-Nado. Even the knights in the lab got excited and thought to themselves that this wouldn't be just a simple exhibition match between some academy students. They were now preparing for a much more thrilling fight. The king, sitting eagerly, couldn't wait for the match to begin, more excited than anyone else. On the battlefield, the lab's team stood against Arnie's team. There were 6 Saito-Nados from the lab against 4 of Arnie's upgraded versions. Arie and Edgar began to plan their attack strategy and decided which Saito-Nado to start with. As soon as the battle began, Arie mounted the fast Saito-Nado, excited, and charged toward the lab team, with 3 of their Saito-Nados attacking him. However, they were shocked when Arnie's fast Saito-Nado stopped running and started flying, something never seen before in the history of Saito-Nados. Not only was it flying, but it was also incredibly fast, dodging all the mana spells thrown at it. Edgar and Darichi then attacked with precision. Edgar shot an arrow tied with a thread from his Saito-Nado to one of the lab's knights, causing the knight to be electrocuted and immobilized. Meanwhile, the knight riding the horse-shaped Saito-Nado, with Eddie and Kito riding it, managed to land a hit and started chasing them. Eddie and Kito's Saito-Nado tried to dodge the attacks from the lab's Saito-Nado. Arie decided to fall back a bit as his mana level dropped to 20%, a significant reduction. He needed a rest to recover his mana. The king, sitting calmly, observed the battle, thinking to himself that the lab's Saito-Nado was stable and controlled, while Arnie's Saito-Nado was wild and unpredictable like a horse, with no clear direction. He couldn't predict who would win, as the lab's knights had more experience and were able to control their Saito-Nados more effectively. However, Arie and his team had much stronger Saito-Nados with greater potential, which threw off the lab's knights. In the midst of the battle, Eddie and Kito regained control of their Saito-Nado and quickly went on the offensive. Eddie attacked the first Saito-Nado knight, followed by the second and third, taking them all down. Edgar and Darichi joined in, taking out the other 2 knights. Only the commander of the knights remained, ready to attack Eddie and Kito's Saito-Nado. But they forgot that Arie was still in the fight. Using the last bit of mana in his Saito-Nado, Arie flew through the air, dodging all the mana attacks from the commander's Saito-Nado. He landed and took down the commander, but then the king stood up and stopped the fight, declaring it a draw between the teams. Both sides were happy with the fair result. One of the lab's commanders congratulated Edgar, saying that if their mana hadn't run out, they would have won. Edgar replied that the problem wasn't the mana, but the lack of experience compared to the lab's knights. At that moment, Commander Jazika, furious at Arie, rushed to him and asked how the knight on the horse could move so fast or how 2 people could even ride the beast-shaped Saito-Nado. Arie was thrilled that someone had finally asked him about the details. He explained everything to Commander Jazika, who listened carefully. Arie mentioned that once he was done, he would send all his designs to the lab. Jazika was excited and thought to himself that he hadn't felt this passionate about Saito-Nados in years. He thanked Arie for reigniting that passion. Meanwhile, the king went to Commander Oliver and told him that everything Arie had made was excellent and would revolutionize Saito-Nados, but there were still many things missing, like experience and a few weaknesses. The king asked Oliver to handle these issues when Arie sent his designs to the lab. A while after the battle, Arie sent all his designs to the lab, which made adjustments and produced large quantities. Arie began working on even more Saito-Nado models. Time passed, and the king decided to gather his son and grandson, Prince Summaries, telling them that he had decided to step down from the throne and pass it to his son. He told his grandson, Prince Summaries, to prepare to rule after him. Arie, Kito, Eddie, and Pachin graduated from middle school, incredibly happy to have graduated without attending any classes, thanks to the king's privileges, which allowed them to skip school and work in the workshop. After they took their break, Arie received a message from the king asking him to come meet him. When they arrived, they met Prince Summaries, who greeted Arie warmly and sat with him. His grandfather then told Arie that he wanted him to make a special Saito-Nado for him. Arie replied that he already had a very special Saito-Nado made just for him. The king, after resigning from the throne, told Arie that he wanted a new Saito-Nado for himself, something unique and made by Arie. Prince Summaries also joined in, insisting he wanted one too, and Arie was excited to help them both. He asked them what kind of Saito they wanted and what specifications they had in mind. Prince Summaries said that the most important thing he wanted was strength, then strength, and more strength. Arie assured him he understood and would make exactly what he wanted. He then asked the king what he wanted for his own Saito. The king told Arie to make it based on his instincts and create something suitable for both of them, something they could easily use. Arie was excited and worked day and night with his team in the workshop to create the best Saito for the king and prince. After a few days, Arie finished 2 incredibly powerful Saito, one in gold and the other in silver. He presented them to the king and the prince. They were both shocked by how advanced and beautiful they were. Arie asked them what they thought, and they both loved the Saito. Prince Summaries, however, argued with his grandfather, saying that the gold one looked too flashy for him. The grandfather, teasing him, replied that the golden color was inspired by the golden lion, a title Summaries hadn't earned yet, since he was still far from being a king. Both of them were annoyed by the teasing, and they decided to settle the argument by battling for the golden Saito. They went to the battlefield, each riding their original Saito, and began fighting. The king showed incredible skill, using his experience to target Prince Summaries' Saito first. But Prince Summaries was also strong and clever. As soon as his grandfather placed his sword on the ground, Prince Summaries jumped over him with his Saito, attacking from behind in a clever move. The prince won, and the grandfather was proud of him, giving him the golden Saito. After some time, a massive disaster struck the kingdom, and a message arrived for the king informing him that the Calyxid monsters were approaching the Alfheim region. The king was shocked by the message and called Arie, Kido, and Eddie to join him. It was revealed that the Calyxid monsters were hybrid creatures, a dangerous and powerful mix between ants and bees. Moreover, their swarm was migrating toward Alfheim, an area where the ether reactor was being manufactured. The ether reactor's job was to convert air into mana, and if it was destroyed or damaged, they would never be able to create another Saito in the kingdom. Arie immediately stated that he couldn't let that happen. He gathered his friends, and they quickly mounted their Saito and rushed to the Alfheim region to help the knights there. At that time, the knights in Alfheim were few in number and were fighting the massive swarm of Calyxid monsters, numbering in the thousands. Their Saito could only manage to take down a few, which wouldn't be enough against such a large force. Just when things seemed bleak, Arie and his friends arrived with their Saito, and as soon as they entered, they took down dozens of monsters in one go. They were joined by Prince Summaries and the king, who also had their new Saito. Prince Summaries charged enthusiastically, using laser powers to eliminate nearly half of the monsters, but his mana ran out very quickly. The king ordered Arie to go find the queen of the monsters and take her down, while the rest of them would hold the line and prevent the monsters from entering Alfheim. Edgar and Derichi were also there, and they teamed up, taking out a large number of monsters. The laboratory commander, watching from above, was impressed by their skills, noticing how much they had developed since their friendly match. Arie, with Kido and Eddie, went in search of the queen but didn't expect what they would find. The queen was massive, as large as the behemoth monster. Her skin was thick, and when they attacked, their weapons broke without causing any damage. Arie instructed them to focus on other vulnerable areas besides her legs and arms. Eddie and Kido noticed that the area around her abdomen had thinner skin, so Arie aimed at it and struck her hard. She got even angrier and started chasing them. Arie instructed Kido and Eddie to distract her while he flew towards her face to finish her off. They did just that, and as soon as she got close, Arie electrocuted her, killing her and taking down the remaining smaller monsters. They saved the ether reactor from being destroyed, and the king was very pleased with Arnie's success. He called Arie into his office, telling him that he had lived up to the responsibility and proven that he deserved to know the secret of the ether reactor's construction. Arie, excited, asked the king how it worked. The king replied that he didn't know, and the only ones who knew were the people from the village of Alfheim. However, they would never tell him unless their ambassador approved. Arie was curious and asked who the ambassador was. Just then, Oliver entered and revealed that he was the ambassador and had agreed to take Arie to the village to learn about the ether reactor's construction process. The next day, Arie traveled with the king and Oliver in a secret vehicle to the Alfheim region. On the way, Oliver asked Arie to guess how old he was. Arie guessed he was in his 20s. But Oliver laughed and revealed that he was 84 years old. He wasn't human, but a member of the elf species, which lived for around 500 years in secret places far from humans. Arie asked why they preferred isolation, and Oliver explained that for the first 100 years, elves lived among humans, but after 200 to 300 years, they lost the desire to interact with others and preferred to isolate themselves. Oliver also warned Arie to be careful because even if he learned the process, creating the reactor wasn't easy. Arie was determined, telling him that he would keep trying until he understood how to create it himself. The king chuckled at Arnie's enthusiasm and said they had arrived. The city was beautiful and mesmerizing. After walking through the city, Oliver took them to meet Princess Kitli, who was lying down, very lazy. The king explained that they had come to learn the secret of the reactor, but the princess told them that not just anyone could know how it worked. The king insisted that Arie was not like anyone else and explained all the achievements Arie had made. The princess agreed to reveal the secret to them, as the king requested, and took them to another elf to explain everything. The elf explained that the ether reactor was originally based on the heart of a living creature. Over time, they had developed it into a crystal that could convert air into mana. To create this, they needed two things: blood and a special script. Arie was surprised and asked what kind of blood they used. The elf explained that initially they used the blood of living creatures, but now they produced synthetic blood through chemical processes. The second requirement was the song called Song of Life, which was necessary for activating the ether reactor. This song was too large to be written on the reactor, so they wrote it on the entire cytonato, the reactor, the ground, and the walls. But even then, it wasn't enough, so they created something called mithril, a spiral-shaped object containing a small piece of stone where the song was inscribed in tiny, precise writing. Only the elves, with their special magic, could inscribe the song on the stone, which was then used in the reactor. Arie understood and asked how they determined the power of the reactor. The elf explained that it depended on the heart of the creature they used. If the creature was large, its crystal would be big and powerful. The king, eager to excite Arie, told him that the heart of the behemoth and the king of the crystal were at his disposal and that Arie could use them however he wanted. Arie was thrilled and decided to stay in the village to learn everything about the reactor and master the process. The king agreed, and Arie spent 3 months in the village, learning quickly and impressing the elves with his progress. Even Princess Kitli remarked that they would meet again soon because she was confident that Arie would accomplish something great in the future. After 3 months, Arie had learned everything he needed to know and returned to the workshop in his city. His friends welcomed him back, and Arie told them they wouldn't waste any more time and would start working on their new cytonato, from start to finish. They worked day and night until they completed the cytonato. Arie entered the workshop and tested his new cytonato for the first time. At that time, we head to another kingdom entirely called the Kingdom of Zeldotic. It is ruled by a king who stands before his people, giving a speech, telling them that the time has come for them to reclaim their lands and create one united kingdom under their name, to be called Fata Aben. It turns out that the king wants to wage war on all surrounding countries to bring them under his rule and form a massive kingdom in his name. We see his people dressed in black celto, similar to Tilstal, and the news of this reaches the kingdom of Shelda. The king of Shelda gathers his leaders to discuss what to do about this issue. He says that something must have happened in Zeldotic to make them feel so powerful that they believe they can attack other kingdoms and conquer them. He tells them that they must prepare thoroughly and not underestimate the power of Zeldotic. Indeed, the people of Zeldotic proved to be strong and managed to conquer several countries through the Celtonite. It turns out that their evil commander stole Arnie's Tilstal to take it back to her city and use it in their war. After that, the focus shifts to the city of Shelda, where the king agrees with other nearby nations to form an alliance and block the attack from Zeldotic. Soldiers from these countries are transferred to Shelda, but at this moment, we are surprised to learn that Zeldotic has created new versions of the Celto, this time shaped like flying ships, which can disrupt all the troops being transferred. They attack the cities allied with Shelda, and from within these ships, the Black Celto descend, attacking the city from within, and Zeldotic manages to conquer it. When the king of Shelda realizes that his plan is failing, he goes to his daughter, Eleanor, and tells her to escape the city with his wife, Martina, immediately. He says he will perform his final duty as king and defend his country to the last moment. He asks his guards to quickly bring him his Celto suit. He puts it on and goes outside the palace, standing in front of the Zeldotic forces. He tells them that he is the king and wants to fight their commander. The commander, who is the king's son, descends with his powerful Tilstal, while Princess Eleanor is escaping with Martina and her daughter. Suddenly, she decides to return and not leave her father alone. Martina's daughter grabs her hand, stopping her, and slaps her to bring her to her senses. She tells her that she is the future queen of the kingdom, and they must preserve her life to restore the kingdom's honor and her father's legacy. Returning now will only lead to her death and the kingdom's eternal loss. Martina agrees with this, takes her hand, and they continue fleeing. Meanwhile, the king is quickly defeated by the Prince of Zeldotic. These events reach King Zeldotic, and his sister informs him of all the kingdoms that have fallen under their control. They are advancing much faster than expected. At the same time, Princess Eleanor, Martina, and her daughter are traveling in a carriage, disguised as ordinary people. They decide to go to Prince Amira's place and stay with him for a while. However, on the way, Zeldotic soldiers stop them and search the carriage. When they find Princess Eleanor inside, they capture her along with Martina and her daughter, setting up a camp in the area. The next day, when Arnie and Prince Amiras learn about what Zeldotic is doing, they decide to go there themselves to confirm. They take all the new Celto with them, disguised as traders. When they reach the gates of Zeldotic's camp, Arnie tells the gate guards they are traders, carrying goods from the mountains to distribute inside. The guard questions them, asking how they could be traders when they carry the strange Celto resembling monsters and horses. Arnie changes the subject and asks them who they are, as he thought this place belonged to Shelda. The guard tells him that it now belongs to Zeldotic, and Shelda no longer exists. At this point, Arnie looks at Amiras, who signals to everyone to mount their Celto. Within minutes, the new Celto destroys all the tilstals of the guards in the Zeldotic camp because the Celto has become much stronger, especially Arnie's version, which can split any Celto in half just by the sword's touch. After the battle ends, everyone gathers around the tilstal of Zeldotic, and they realize that their tilstals were stolen and identical copies were made. They are extremely frustrated and confirm that the rumors they heard were true. Meanwhile, rumors spread in Zeldotic about a strong boy riding mechanical beasts, called the Soul Reaper. He becomes a wanted figure and they want to uncover his identity. At this time, we find Princess Eleanor captured and locked in the room of the Prince of Zeldotic. He threatens her, telling her he will marry her by force, as his aunt desires. He then leaves the room, speaking with the general, saying he needs to find the Soul Reaper quickly before he marries Eleanor. We see Nora, disguised as a servant, overhearing their conversation. She is actually a spy for Arnie in Zeldotic's palace. The general tells the prince that they should leave this matter to him, and he will find the Soul Reaper. The evil commander overhears this and tells the general she also wants to search for the Soul Reaper with him. The general agrees, and their current mission is to find Arnie or the Soul Reaper, as they believe. Meanwhile, Nora prepares an urgent report and sends it to Arnie, informing him of Princess Eleanor's situation and asking for his help to rescue her from the forced marriage. Arnie shows this report to Amiras, who becomes furious and agrees with Arnie to rescue the princess as quickly as possible. They prepare themselves, and Edgar sets out to explore the area more with his Celto. At the same time, the Prince of Zeldotic is aboard his flying ship. As soon as he sees them, he orders the ship's captain to release the Black Tilstals to fight Edgar and Derichi. The captain obeys and releases the Black Tilstals, which are also very powerful, but not as strong as Arnie's upgraded Celto, since Arnie has added many enhancements and powerful weapons. A battle breaks out between Edgar, Derichi, and the Black Tilstals. When the Prince of Zeldotic sees that his knights are losing, he descends himself with his personal Tilstal, which is equipped with many swords and is very strong with excellent combat skills. He fights Derichi's Celto, who tries to defend but can't attack due to the prince's overwhelming strength. Just as the prince thinks he will win the battle, Hilfi arrives at the perfect moment, offering support and fighting the prince. At that moment, a smoke bomb falls over the battlefield, obscuring vision. When the smoke clears a little, we see the prince and his Tilstal tied to the ship, attempting to escape. The prince enters his ship, extremely angry, and the evil commander tells him to thank her later for saving him. He becomes furious with her and leaves, sitting alone for a while. Meanwhile, Edgar and Derichi tell themselves that they need Arnie to create a weapon capable of facing the strange ships. After a while, Arnie and Amaris travel to a commercial city within Shelda. However, upon arrival, Amaris told Arnie that the city, once lively before Zeldotic took control, had now become like a deserted town. They roamed the city disguised so that no one would recognize them, and eventually, they arrived at a house where Eddie opened the door. Inside, they found Nora, and they learned they could now enter their small Saito Natos to fight and rescue the princess. They all suited up, with Prince Amaris wearing his for the first time, and since it was small, he didn't pay attention to the larger Saito Natos. They jumped from the rooftops. Once they reached a high place, Nora told them that the princess was being held on the top floor of one of the 4 towers ahead. However, the guards were so heavily stationed that she couldn't determine which tower the princess was in. Arnie suggested they split up and search each tower to find and rescue the princess. They agreed, and Arnie went to the first tower, where he found Martina. He introduced himself, and she trusted him. Before the guards could enter, she grabbed Arnie tightly and they escaped from the tower. Meanwhile, Amaris managed to reach Martina's daughter, took her, and they ran. Eddie arrived at the 3rd tower, excited, but was surprised to find it deserted, with no one there. In the 4th tower, Kido entered and found the princess. He urged her to hurry and escape before the guards arrived, but she refused, saying that even if she escaped, she had nowhere to go. Kido got off his Saito Nato and told her that he and his group would protect her. She insisted that she would only cause trouble and wouldn't be of any help. She asked him to leave and promised not to report him. Kido, frustrated, asked why she was behaving this way, sensing that the princess was upset. He respectfully knelt before her and told her to consider him her protector, someone who would stay with her and keep her safe no matter what. The princess, Eleanor, trusted him and agreed to go with him. Kido, relieved, mounted his Saito Nado, carried her, and began running. Soon, they saw Arie signaling them from below, and they landed at the indicated spot, where Martina and her daughter were overjoyed to learn that Eleanor was safe. Arie told them that they had no time to waste, so they quickly fled the area, mounted their Saito Nados, and left the city. At that moment, General Zeldotic spotted them and managed to track their route. He ordered Commander Levantet to use his ship to chase down the Silver Phoenix team. When Eleanor and the team saw Levantet's ship, they were all terrified, except for Arie, who felt excitement upon realizing that someone had surpassed him with more advanced technology. Arie was eager to speak to this person and learn how they managed to create something new. He flew quickly towards the ship. As soon as they saw him, they recognized Arie as the Soul Reaper, and they were terrified. Commander Levantet was equally shocked when he realized that something was flying other than his ship. Levantet, obsessed with Saito Nados, wanted to talk to the Soul Reaper to ask about his Saito Nado, but the general decided to retreat, as Arie had destroyed the ship's legs, making it impossible to land. Upon returning to the palace, Prince Zeldotic angrily struck the general for allowing Eleanor to escape. The general explained that it wasn't in his control, as he had seen the Soul Reaper and the horse-shaped Saito Nado, and warned that they couldn't stand against this new group, as they were far stronger than any group they had faced before. At that point, Commander Levantet intervened, agreeing with the general. Meanwhile, Arie and Eleanor's group arrived at a city belonging to Shelda, just outside the main part. Arie met with the surviving commanders, and Martina took charge in the king's absence. Arie told them that the machines they were using in their war were far too weak. He and his friends would help them upgrade their weapons. Martina asked Arie how he planned to acquire the equipment to upgrade the machines. Arie replied that he and his team would steal the equipment from the enemy's army and bring it back to improve their machines. Martina agreed and thanked Arie for his help. When Zeldotic's army arrived at the city gates, all the guards lined the city walls and used the newly upgraded machines to fire at Zeldotic's soldiers from a distance. The enemy quickly retreated because they couldn't attack from such a distance. The people of Shelda rejoiced, as they had finally managed to overcome Zeldotic's army. They shared the good news with Arie. Arie was excited and asked his friends to continue working on the machines to prepare for any future battles. Meanwhile, Amaris went to talk with Martina and her daughter, asking if Eleanor was the one to inherit the throne after her father. Martina confirmed that, as the rest of Eleanor's family was deceased, she was the only heir. Amaris told them that Eleanor wasn't ready to rule due to her emotional state and lack of strength in her character. Martina responded that there was no one else who could take the throne right now. Amaris then approached Arie and suggested that they help Eleanor become capable of ruling in the future. Arie gathered his friends, and they brainstormed ideas on how to help Eleanor, but most of their suggestions failed. Finally, Eddie proposed that they make the princess feel safe and help her integrate with them. Over time, her emotional state would improve, and they could teach her everything she needed to know. They agreed that Kido would be the best person to start with, as the princess trusted him after she escaped with him. Kido agreed and went to the princess's room. As soon as he entered, the princess knew he was there to convince her to take the throne. Kido told her he was there to boost her morale. She responded by saying that she didn't see how her morale could improve while her people were dying outside. Kido gently took her hand and told her that they were leaving the depressing room because she was not a trapped princess. He took her to see the workshop and introduced her to everyone. He also took her to the market to change the scenery. Later, they went to a high place to watch the sunset. She thanked him for improving her mood, and they returned to the palace. At that moment, we see the sister of King Zeldotic with the evil commander, telling her that if she could bring Eleanor back, she would give her everything she wanted. The evil commander agreed and told her team to prepare to go retrieve Eleanor. That night, one of the soldiers entered the princess's room with a knife. As soon as he lifted the covers, he found that the princess was gone. However, Kido, who was behind him, quickly dealt with him. Arie and his team had anticipated that an attack might occur, but they didn't know when. The evil commander had her goons break into the area and steal everything, but they couldn't operate the Saito Nado because Arie had installed a feature that only allowed it to be operated with a key. They managed to capture the goons, and Edgar took his revenge on the evil commander, killing her. They were able to rescue the princess. The next day, the princess thanked them for their help. After the failure of the evil commander, Prince Zeldotic became extremely angry at his aunt and told her that he would no longer rely on her for anything. He would take matters into his own hands and bring back Eleanor himself. He decided to take his entire army in all the ships to the city where Eleanor was held, conquer it, and bring her back by force. He immediately prepared the army and they set off toward the city, hovering above it. They were puzzled by the quietness of the city and the lack of any reaction or resistance from inside. The commander decided to initiate the attack, but just before giving the signal, they were surprised by missiles being fired at them. Below, Arie ordered his friends to equip the missiles into their cytonados and continuously fire at the enemy's ships. Several ships were destroyed. The commander ordered his soldiers to deploy the black cytonados immediately. A soldier warned him that the distance was too great, and landing the cytonados at that distance could cause them to crash or malfunction. The commander insisted that they had no other option and had to deploy the cytonados or they would never get the chance again. The soldier followed the command, but when the cytonado landed, it couldn't take off immediately due to the long distance. Seeing this, Edgar ordered them to destroy the fallen cytonado before it could get up. Prince Zeldotic, realizing that he had fallen into Arnie's trap, ordered the commander to take action immediately, or else he would lose face in front of his aunt. The commander explained that they had no other choice, as ships 2 and 3 had been destroyed and they needed to retreat. However, Prince Zeldotic refused, insisting that they continue fighting. Commander Leventet stood, eager to see the Soul Reaper again, hoping to see him fly. Indeed, Arnie appeared inside his cytonado and flew towards the prince's ship, continuously attacking it to destroy it. The prince ordered the commander to quickly call in the Black Fang squad for reinforcements. Even when they arrived, Prince Summaries intervened with his cytonado, shooting flames that destroyed all the black cytonados in seconds, completely wiping out the Black Fang squad. The prince, stunned, ordered all ships to retreat quickly before they were destroyed. All ships complied, except for the one carrying Commander Leventet, who asked the captain to wait a bit before leaving. Arnie, meanwhile, continued attacking the prince's ship, destroying many parts of it. The prince mounted his cytonado and climbed to the top of the ship to fight Arnie and protect his ship so they could escape. However, Arnie was much stronger, and with the first blow, the prince realized that he stood no chance against Arnie. He spoke to Arnie, offering to join his kingdom and give him whatever he wanted in return. Arnie agreed to join, but with a condition that all designs and new technology used in cytonados would belong to him, and that everything would be done under his supervision. He also demanded that all black cytonados be sent to his city because, as the king's representative, everything he said was as if it came directly from the king. If they refused, it would not be in their best interest. The prince felt insulted, believing no one should speak on behalf of the king, and became enraged. He refused to beg for his life and destroyed his ship in anger. The ship crashed to the ground, along with the prince's cytonado, and the prince died. The remaining ships quickly retreated after the prince's death. Commander Leventet returned to Zeldotic's palace and spoke with the king's sister, who was devastated by the news of the prince's death. She was furious with him and demanded vengeance. Leventet assured her that he would create a weapon much stronger than the enemies to get revenge for the prince. He explained that as the Sky Commander, only he could create machines capable of flying better than anyone else. The king's sister threatened him, saying that if he didn't create a powerful weapon and avenge the prince, she would ensure he suffered a terrible fate. Leventet was motivated and took it as a challenge. Meanwhile, in Eleanor's city, the people celebrated their victory over the enemy army, hoping to reclaim their kingdom. Eleanor decided to take responsibility and become the queen of her people. Everyone supported her, including Kido, who promised to always be her protector and assist her whenever needed. She thanked him and, along with everyone else, was encouraged by their support. Eleanor decided to gather her people at the palace and declared from her balcony that she was the new queen of Shelda. She promised to reclaim all the lands lost to the enemies, and everyone cheered. Arnie, along with his friends, went to the place where the black cytonados and the ships destroyed in the previous battle were stored. Arnie was thrilled because he had discovered an incredible feature in the enemy's black cytonados, a new material inside the ether reactor that conserved energy, boosting their power without depleting mana quickly. This would help them in developing their cytonados. The thing that excited Arnie the most, however, was the discovery of how the enemy's ships flew. They used the energy from the ether reactor, converting the wind into mana, making the ships fly. Arnie wanted to learn how the ships were made, and he knew he would only get the answer from their creator, Leventet. Later, Arnie returned to the palace because Martina wanted to speak with him. Upon entering, Arnie found Eleanor admiring Kido, who was trying to escape from her advances. He needed help, but no one would assist him, as everyone enjoyed teasing him. Arnie sat at the table with them, and Martina expressed how grateful she was for his help. However, even though they had won the battle, the enemy's army was still larger and much stronger. Martina asked Arnie if he could lend them some of his cytonados. Arnie agreed but stated that he would only lend them some of the enemy's black cytonados, which would be returned after the battle. He also promised to teach them how to create their own cytonados for future protection. Martina agreed and thanked him again. After a while, Shelda's army regains parts of its kingdom, and they are overjoyed with their progress. During their celebration, they spot something flying in the distance. They initially think it's Levantite's ship, but when it gets closer, they realize it's not. It's a massive flying monster heading toward them. Meanwhile, Arie, flying with his Celto, realizes that Commander Levantite has built another ship, this time in the shape of a dragon. It is incredibly powerful. The ship unleashes flames and attacks Arie and his companions. The entire city is engulfed in flames in seconds, revealing that Levantite is not joking this time and has indeed built something far more powerful than Arnie's Celto. The general is inside and is furious with Arie. He tells himself that he will do whatever it takes to eliminate Arie, avenge the prince's death, and take back everything Shelda Kingdom lost. Meanwhile, Arie is trying to escape from the dragon chasing him, while also trying to figure out how the dragon works and how it fights. He realizes that the dragon is covered with numerous Celto devices. He also notices that the ship shaped like a dragon is very powerful and accurate in its targeting when shooting at close range, but weaker at longer distances. A battle rages above in the sky, while below on the ground, there is complete chaos. People are terrified and running, and Edger and Derichi are in their Celto, trying to control all the black Celto on the ground. But both sides are equally matched, and the situation is difficult, as there are a large number of black Celto. At the same time, a knight inside the black Celto is specifically targeting Derichi because he had been defeated by him before and wants revenge. Derichi realizes he is the target, so he abandons everything and fights the knight one-on-one. The black Celto is currently stronger because it can attack with its full power and its mana doesn't deplete. At this point, Derichi understands what Arie meant when he talked about the energy-conserving material the enemy uses. Meanwhile, Eddie takes her Celto and tries to attack the dragon with electric spears. The general notices her and destroys most of the spears, but one spear manages to reach the dragon and destroys the back door. Derichi and the black Celto continue fighting, but Derichi remembers a move Arie had taught them when they were cornered. He throws a rope around the black Celto, which electrocutes it, weakening its reactor. Derichi takes advantage of the opportunity and attacks with all his strength, using a lot of mana. Eventually, the black Celto of the knight falls to the ground, and its ether is damaged. Derichi grabs his sword to destroy the black Celto, but the knight inside manages to escape quickly. After the black Celto is destroyed, Derichi takes a moment to catch his breath, as he is exhausted, and his mana is nearly depleted. He then quickly looks around to check on his friends, but at that moment, he sees Arie trying to escape from the dragon in the sky. While escaping, Arie figures out the cause of the dragon's strength and what powers it. He notices that there are around 13 reactors on the dragon, which provide the power. Arie thinks that if he destroys these 13 reactors, the dragon will be destroyed, and the battle will end. He tries to fly around the dragon to destroy the first reactor, and after much effort, he succeeds, though it is difficult and time-consuming. The general uses a feature that Levantite had added to the dragon, smoke projectiles. But these aren't just for obscuring vision. Inside them are solid materials that enter the Celto, damaging its wings. This causes Arie to lose control of his Celto, preventing him from flying. He crashes onto the surface of a building. The general thinks he has finally rid himself of Arie, but Arie is unharmed. Only his wings are damaged. Once he regains his position, Arie fires a projectile at the dragon's surface, destroying several more reactors. The captain tells the general that if they lose one more reactor, their energy will be depleted, and the dragon will no longer be able to fly. The general sees no other option but to retreat, planning to return later to continue the battle. Thus, the battle ends in a stalemate. The Silver Phoenix team returns, feeling defeated for the first time. On top of that, all their Celto has been affected by the battle and needs repairs before they can return to Eleanor's city. Arie, however, is very frustrated and tells himself that he cannot let this happen again. Meanwhile, the genius engineer Levantite is fixing his dragon, and the general arrives to speak with him. Levantite tells the general that he has added many more features to the dragon, making it much stronger and nearly indestructible. He also mentions that the 13 reactors will be linked together, working like one massive reactor with almost unlimited energy. However, Levantite warns the general that next time in battle, he needs to be more careful because the dragon's power will be different. If he can't control it, it will turn against him. Levantite also tells him that he will join the battle next time to see how his new enhancements perform. The king's sister takes the knight who had been fighting Derichi, revealing that he is the general's son. She leads him to a room with a huge Celto and tells him that this Celto was a gift to her, but she couldn't use it, so she'll give it to him in place of his broken one. The knight is overjoyed and thanks her, saying that with this new Celto, he will defeat all their enemies without mercy. Meanwhile, Arie gathers with Eleanor, his friends, and Shelda's leaders to discuss their plan for the next enemy attack. However, they are uncertain about their strategies and unsure of their success. Eleanor tries to comfort them, telling them that she will gather her army and fight alongside them next time. Together, they will use all their strength to ensure a high chance of success. They all get excited and thank Eleanor. She goes to speak with her army and people, telling them that they will assist the Silver Phoenix team in winning and reclaim their capital from the enemies. The people are motivated and excited, joining the army to take back their kingdom. Their first target is Shelda Castle, where they aim to retake it. A battle begins on the ground as they start attacking all the ships in the sky. The princess herself is present at the battle. Suddenly, the dragon ship appears, with Levantite aboard. However, the general is stunned when he sees another large, giant ship flying toward him, and on its surface the Soul Reaper stands. He is shocked and excited at the same time, eager to find out who will win, him or Arie. Arnie's ship begins the attack, flying at a very high speed towards the dragon. The dragon ship starts firing at them, and the workshop owner tells Pat Sion, who is piloting the ship, to veer sharply and fly above the clouds. The dragon follows them and also ascends into the clouds. At that moment, they all celebrate, saying they've taken the bait. Arnie's ship fires projectiles at the dragon ship, and the general orders to destroy these projectiles before they hit. Once they are destroyed, oil leaks out and lands on the ship, confusing everyone as they don't understand what fell on their ship. Arie then sets the ship on fire, and it burns completely. Levantite laughs loudly, clearly impressed with Arnie's thinking. But to him, the battle isn't over yet because he is also smart and has planned for any eventuality. He tells the general that if he were in his position, he would use the maximum power and activate the new feature he calls Blood Curse Power. The general listens to him and activates the feature. Suddenly, the dragon begins functioning as if it were a real dragon. The ether reactor pulses, and the dragon's size increases to 5 times its original size. Everyone is stunned and terrified, even Arie, who finds that his long-range attacks are ineffective against the dragon. The battle becomes much more difficult. Even on the ground, the general's son's new Celto is stronger than any Celto they are wearing, preventing them from taking control of Shelda Castle. However, Arie, showing his intelligence, realizes that the dragon hasn't actually grown. Instead, it has been surrounded by a barrier that has made it appear larger. He decides to take a risk and breach this barrier to destroy the dragon from within. He flies at high speed, avoiding any obstacles, and manages to break through the barrier. The general attempts to destroy Arnie's Celto with the projectiles he launches, but Arie evades them all. Meanwhile, Derichi and the general's son are trying to deal with a knight preventing them from entering the castle. The knight is strong and is able to hold them off. Derichi calls on his friends for help, and they plan to immobilize the knight. They succeed in doing so, and Amiras joins the fight, using his Celto and his fiery attacks to destroy the knight's black Celto. This allows them to finally enter the castle, marking the beginning of their victory. Meanwhile, Arie manages to strike the dragon from the inside randomly until he hits something that damages the barrier, causing the dragon to shrink back to its original size. The dragon appears severely damaged, and the general declares that he might sacrifice his life, but he will never let them win. He pilots the dragon at top speed toward the princess to kill her, and then he abandons the ship, letting it move on its own, while he mounts his Celto and flies towards Arnie's ship to stop it. At the same time, Kido asks the workshop owner to steer their ship closer to the general's Celto. Kido then wears his Celto and boards the dragon ship, attacking the general. He manages to defeat him, and Arie, with Kido's help, changes the direction of the ship. Together, they destroy the dragon, winning the battle. The shock from the defeat causes the king's sister to take her own life, and the king falls into a state of shock. Shelda Kingdom becomes stronger than ever, rebuilding from scratch. Arie and his friends decide to return to their city after spending so much time in Shelda to rest for a while. They gather their belongings and load them onto the ship. Queen Eleanor herself, along with her people, comes to bid farewell to Arie and his friends, thanking them for everything, especially Kido. They board the ship, and within days, they arrive in their city. The king honors them again, thanking them for their bravery, particularly Arie, who gave the king's grandson, who had no real purpose in life, the honor of being mentioned in the future. Everyone laughs. They return to the workshop, and Arie keeps discussing things he wants to do with the Celto. His friends grow tired of him and leave to rest. However, because of Arie, a new age begins with completely new technology, known as the Age of Flying Ships. Everything changes and develops as Arie had hoped, and in the end, he manages to achieve his dream.